It's time again for Mormon Land, where we explore news in and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm managing editor Dave Noyce. I oversee the Salt Lake Tribune's faith coverage. I'm joined again by senior religion reporter Peggy Fletcher-Stack. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, Dave.
We remind you about another way to support Mormon Land. Just go to patreon.com, where with a small donation, you can access all the Tribune's faith coverage, ad-free podcast episodes, and the full Mormon Land newsletter. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/Mormonland. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at mormon.land. Now for today's show. Faithful Salt Lake Tribune readers know Eli McCann well. He's the award-winning columnist who has them cracking up about coming out as a coffee drinker one minute and tearing up about the Latter-day Saint youth group in the Western Pacific who won his heart the next. Now, his monthly humor columns have been compiled into one bright, breezy book titled We're Thankful for the Moisture, a gay guide's guide to Mormon faith, family, and fruit preservation. It's a valentine of sorts to Latter-day Saint culture, containing classics like his first date with his future non-Mormon husband at, of all places, the Kirtland Temple, his adventures and misadventures in the kitchen after unearthing a missionary cookbook, and the awkward but somehow appropriate chuckles he shared with a bishop when he signed his resignation letter from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A practicing attorney, Eli lives in Salt Lake City with his husband, physician Skylar Westerdahl, their toddler son, West, and, as Eli puts it, two naughty yet worship dogs. Eli and Skylar join us today in studio to talk about his writings, their life, and why Eli still finds laughter and love in the religious culture that bred him. Skylar, Eli, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Those dogs are becoming less and less worshipped, by the way.
Oh, really?
They're driving us crazy lately.
As they're prone to do, right?
Yes. Right.
Okay, Eli, just a basic question about the book. Why? I mean, are the bills really piling up that much since adding West?
Well, yes. Why the book? Because I love attention. And so, I've been writing these columns for a few years, and I was talking a little while back with the publisher, Signature Books, and they had talked to me about some possible publishing opportunities. And during that conversation, we said, there are enough of these columns with the Tribune now that they could probably be compiled into a book that might be interesting for people. And so I approached you and the Tribune to see if there was interest there, and everybody was on board. And so I'm thrilled with it. I'm excited about it. It's kind of a dream come true, really, for me.
Okay. So you guys each want to tell us a little bit about your bios, your personal bios? Maybe start with Eli.
Okay, I'll go first. So I grew up in the Salt Lake Valley in South Jordan, Utah, in a very LDS family. I say Mormon, and so I'm going to use the word Mormon in this podcast, even though Dave edits that out every time I write it in my column.
It's been known to appear in our podcast since it's called that. But yes, okay.
So I'm in my early 40s now. So I grew up really mostly in the 90s in Utah culture and what everything that amounted to in the 90s, and went to BYU law school. I'm a practicing lawyer by day, but I've always been kind of a creative writer and have found opportunities to express my creative writing. And I've been writing for the Tribune for 3.5 years, I think, almost. Yeah. Crazy. I can't believe it's been that long.
Do you have siblings?
I have 3 sisters, and they all live nearby. Skylar and I are very close with both of our families.
All right, Skylar.
Hello, I'm Skylar. I'm also sick. That's the first and most important feature of my bio that I want to share. So sorry for everybody. I'm from just outside of Portland, Oregon, kind of like the suburban enclave north of there. Interestingly, I didn't grow up Mormon, but I did have a lot of Mormon friends growing up. Our closest family across the street were Mormon. I'm still scared of her. The mom. Hello, Lynn Williams. And currently I'm a dermatology resident and, quote, the husband online.
That's true.
He says enthusiastically.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have 5 siblings, rather 4 siblings, 5 total. 2 older sisters, twins, an older brother, and then a younger brother. It's kind of a blended family.
Okay, so back, Eli, what have you learned about your Mormon roots since marrying Skylar?
Oh, so much, actually. It has actually been really fascinating to see my own culture reflected through Skylar's eyes. And this was true more in the early years. Skylar and I have known each other for 11 years now. And those first few years when he moved to Utah for the first time, had never lived here, had, passing understanding of Mormonism, but not in the weeds on any particular doctrinal issue or cultural issue. It was really, really interesting to see what amused him, what touched him, what confused him. And they were never the things that I would have predicted would have done any of those three things. There were a lot of things that I write in one of the columns about Skylar asking me a lot of questions about the Holy Ghost going to bed at midnight and that phrase. And, I thought it was a funny phrase, but the concept of a Holy Ghost and what the Holy Ghost is, I've always sort of taken for granted because I've known and heard about it.
Who knew how scary it could be, right?
Exactly. And
Skylar don't really understand, why does it go to bed at midnight? Yeah. And what does that imply?
But it was so funny when he started asking me questions about, for example, the Holy Ghost. And so why is it called a ghost? And so does it haunt people? Well, no, it doesn't haunt people. Yeah, spooky. That sort of thing was amusing. But then on the other hand, I think I wrote in one of the columns as well about a time that my mom wrote in a birthday card to Skylar, "We're so happy to have you in our forever family." And he was really touched by that. And that was something that, again, like I initially saw the phrase and was like, there's my mom just like pushing religion on us. But his reaction was, "Oh, what a lovely thing that families want to be together forever." And there have been moments with him where I've taken a step back and been like, okay, I could be less cynical about some of the things that really shaped me as a child.
So, Skylar, speaking about that, when Eli first started writing about you, it was always as this wide-eyed observer, didn't know that much about Mormonism or religion, kind of naive, but not really cynical or harsh. Mm-hmm. Now that you know Mormon culture and traditions, has your view changed at all?
No, I don't think it's changed. I think in some ways maybe it's just more complicated. With knowledge comes complications. But I think I was thinking about this. I feel more protective nowadays with other people who are maybe coming with more stereotypical views now that I know a bit more. And I feel like that's how it's interestingly changed the most. Even with Eli, I feel like sometimes he'll bring up something that was emotionally hard for him, and I'll have to be like, stop. So I think that's what's changed a bit.
It's a lot of it. I'll speak for you, but you can correct me if you'd like. But I think a lot of it comes from Skylar is very protective of my family because my family has been just like so remarkably good and welcoming of Skylar. And so I think when he hears criticism of Mormons, the people, he is picturing my family. And I've noticed that frequently that's when his kind of defensiveness will come out. Like, let's not paint everybody with the broad brushstroke. Let's not, assume the worst in people just because they belong to this group, this religious body.
And I think that's why I came in to Utah and just our even first interactions with him explaining his culture and family is that I think that people are inherently good, or people are inherently people no matter where they come from. And this added extra was just their unique experiences, but it's not changing them necessarily as people, if that makes sense. Like, it's more like, oh, they like the color green. That's interesting. I want to know why they like the color green, rather than, oh, they like the color green. That implies that they are envious or something. I don't know. Just it's not a character judgment. Yeah.
Do you sometimes find yourself surprised you're defending some Mormon culture?
Yeah, definitely. Usually it's with people who are not in Utah, or it's when Eli is feeling cynical. But yeah, I think I am a little bit surprised. And it's more, I just don't like ignorance. I don't like people speaking out of ignorance. And so now that I have known a little bit more, it's fine if you are ignorant, but, correct it essentially, or I don't want to just let it pass me by without making people a little less ignorant with their words or thoughts of others.
Yeah. Eli, you've told this before, but I have to ask you now, especially with Skylar here. Tell us about your first date at the Kirtland Temple. And Skylar, I want to know your impressions after that.
It is the funniest first date for me to have had with this man. But, we met through a dating app, and we're living 1,000 miles apart from each other. Skylar lived in Wisconsin. I was living in Salt Lake City. And so we actually didn't meet in person for about a month, right? We just kind of chatted and called each other. And I thought I'm never going to actually meet him until one day Skylar called me and said, I have to go to a wedding in Cleveland, Ohio. Why don't you come and meet me for this wedding? And we can finally meet, go on this weekend date, I guess. And I was hesitant to do this because it sounded like a crazy idea, but I ultimately did end up going. And I got to Cleveland about 12 hours before Skylar arrived. I flew there and he was driving in. And so I had a day to kill in Cleveland, Ohio. And I found out right before I went there that Cleveland is right next to Kirtland. It's like 20 minutes.
It's really close. I used to live in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is just across the border.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea. And I had never been to Kirtland, and I'm fascinated with pioneer history. My ancestors were in Kirtland. And so I was like, well, I have 12 hours to kill. And so I went and had sort of a hilarious day there as this ex-Mormon going on a tour of the Kirtland Temple. I was on a one-on-one tour with this tour guide because it was a quiet Thursday morning, and he gave me an extended tour that was incredibly awkward, just direct eye contact. The man became emotional many times and then made me sing the Spirit of God with him. He made me play the piano while he sang, weeping down his beard. And I was just like, this is so, I flew out here to go on a gay date with a man from the internet, and I'm now doing the Spirit of God with Dumbledore in the Kirtland Temple. And so, and then I went to Pioneer Village and got trapped there with a couple of really nice sister missionaries until their backs were turned to me. And at one point I just sprinted out of Pioneer Village and I had enough for the day. So that night when Skylar arrived in Cleveland, we met in person for the first time. It was late, and we were talking about what we were going to do the next day. And Skylar asked me what I had been up to all day, because he's like, "You've been here for 12 hours. What did you even do in Cleveland all day?" And so I sort of word vomited to him, like, well, I went to this place called Kirtland because I don't know if you knew this, but I grew up Mormon, and there's a temple there because the Mormon pioneers were there, and the temples are the state. It's an everlasting covenant thing, and he's just sort of staring at me like, what? Who is this? What is this? And I, as I'm saying all this, I'm hearing myself talk, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to bury the weird stuff. What am I doing? Why am I, and when I finished, he said, we had the next day to kill. We had nothing going on. He said, do you want to go back there? I would love to go back there with you and see this, because he was so fascinated by it. And so I was like, okay, so our first date was a tour of the Kirtland Temple. And it was so bizarre for me. And I'm standing there with him, and there was a family on the tour all wearing like matching BYU t-shirts, and they had driven straight from Provo to Kirtland and probably Nauvoo. And we did this tour. And because I had told Skylar all about the Kirtland Temple and my experience there, he went into this somewhat of an expert on the temple. And we had this tour guide who was not in great shape. And so he kept getting out of breath. We'd go up those stairs and he'd get out of breath, and he would say, somebody else take over for a minute while I catch my breath.
Does anybody have any facts to say about this room?
Yeah, the Kirtland Temple. And so I was, I had just done a 3-hour tour. So I was like, I actually am loaded of facts. And Skylar's, chiming in and like, isn't that desk Joseph Smith's desk over there? And it was so funny to me. We did end up right after the Kirtland Temple. We went to Pioneer Village and did a tour of Pioneer Village as well. And there was a senior missionary who gave us a tour of Pioneer Village, and he kept asking us questions to try and figure out, like, are you guys cousins? Are you brothers? And we didn't really want to get into like, no, we're on a gay date at a LDS church site with the senior missionary. And he finally seemed to understand, because we were dodging the question, like, well, not really, we met yesterday, and he stopped himself and he said, never mind. If I was writing a book about your lives, this will just be the chapter that never gets written, which I've always thought was a really weird thing.
Sweet.
And there's the difference, right?
He gave Skylar a Book of Mormon, and I had told him that I, had left the church, and he gave Skylar a Book of Mormon, and then he pointed at me and he said, I'm not giving him one because it'll be wasted on him. And that was,
but he said it tongue in cheek. He was very charming.
And then that was our first date, and then Skylar moved to Salt Lake City the following year, and then we got married.
So what were your impressions of that?
I think
that day?
Charming. Just everything. Eli has this ability to really sell people. Sell is a bad term. really bring out the best in people and experiences. And so he came to me in this hotel and he told me this whole story. And I remember the entire time just like kind of mouth a little open, but definitely smiling. And he was like describing a Gilmore Girls, Stars Hollow, like this like cute, adorable little place that within just a short time, the cast of characters. And I just already immediately felt like I wanted to see it and know these people too. He's so good at that. He's so good at it.
Oh, thank you, honey.
You do know that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's in Cleveland, right?
Yeah, we could have done that.
But then everyone does that.
This is much more interesting.
Yes, totally.
Mormon Land will be right back.
Okay, so speaking of Eli and his talent, I know as a writer, I'm always walking around thinking, ooh, that'd be a good quote, or ooh, that would be a good story. Now you're in this relationship. Are you constantly thinking, oh, thanks, Skylar, that's going to go in the book. That's going to, I'm going to write about this.
To a degree, yes. And it's interesting. I sometimes feel like I'm trying to hold that impulse down a little bit just for the sake of, I don't know that it's always good to content farm everything that's happening in your life and your relationship. Yeah. And there are times where something will happen and Skylar will say, you're not allowed to write about that, and, but on the other hand, I do really enjoy documenting our lives together. And there is another part of me that thinks this is going to be so fun to have in the future to look back on, and for our child to be able to look back on. I can't believe that I have a book full of stories of our life together. That's something that I'm just always going to have that. And so, yeah, I mean, as a writer, you all know it's just what you do is you go throughout your day and you sort of see the world through kind of a writer lens. I heard an interview from David Sedaris a little while back where he said, he thinks it would be really sad to go through the world not with a writer brain. He kind of was joking about that because something will happen to him that he finds amusing. And he thinks, if I wasn't a writer, I don't know that I would have even thought of that at all, or have found that amusing. And that's sort of how I feel too.
So what does your family feel about being out there? Your extended family, how do they all feel? Have they gotten any pushback or criticism from people about them being the subject of some of your essays? I mean,
I'll say, I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I will say my extended family, sometimes, I've written stories about like my grandpa or cousins or whatever. They cherish these. And they have expressed, I have a huge extended family, but I've had extended family members express to me regularly how neat it is to them that our family stories are being preserved in a newspaper. I've written some about Skylar's family as well. They seem delighted by it. You're giving me a smirk.
No one is upset by anything you write, but there are times where our memory of events is different than your memory of events. And we find there have been individuals in your family too that have wanted to clarify either with you or the people.
You're going to get sued. The Tribune's going to get sued. No, there was on one occasion, Skylar's mother, I wrote something funny that she had said and she read it and she called me and she said, Eli, I didn't say that. I said this. And it was a little bit of a different joke. And she was mad because her joke was funnier than what I wrote. And it was. And I was like, I misremembered it. And she was like, my joke was funnier than that. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I
don't remember you asking for a correction, though.
No, it was printed already. It was too late.
The damage was done.
Yeah.
So we've covered this a little bit, Skylar, but how do you feel sometimes about having your live choices, witty comments being fodder for Eli's writing? And you've already answered. Do you have veto power? And does he get...
No, not really.
Not really.
Does he get permission ahead of time?
No, he does not get permission. There are occasionally things that he, mostly like photos or something where I'm like, I do not want that on the internet. But
do you read his columns before?
Yes. Often I read his columns before it's published. I always read his columns. So if it's published, we have a tradition often of going to our little local diner and in the morning on Sunday and reading it. Mm-hmm. And I will always read it then.
And I just to be clear, there are a few instances where if there's anything that I'm worried might even be remotely sensitive, I clear that with Skylar in advance. So in December, I wrote a Christmas column where he had talked to me recently about coming from a family that you've described as somewhat dysfunctional, playfully dysfunctional. And he had made some really beautiful comments to me about why he feels so nostalgic around Christmas. And I asked him if I could write about that. And he said, absolutely. But I cleared all the quotes with him in advance because I said, this is a much more sensitive area than us just being like annoyed at our dogs. And so I want to make sure you're comfortable with this. And so I do. He does have some veto power. Some veto.
Says that. Okay, I see it.
Yeah.
I like that. Don't write about this.
That's more of a preemptive strike.
Yeah.
It's prior restraint is what we would call it in the journalism business.
First Amendment. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, both of you, have you gotten comments from coworkers about the columns, positive or negative?
I have. I work for a company. The people I work with are spread out all over the world and not in Utah. But people that I work with have come across my writing, and I've had coworkers around the country email me and say, "Hey, I read your columns in the Salt Lake Tribune. I don't know why I'm reading the Salt Lake Tribune, but I do." And and so that's been kind of fun to see. I think you've had people periodically.
It's not as often as I think your writing deserves. It's kind of weird because I'm a resident and was a medical student. And so Eli has created such a fantastic life and met so many interesting people that at home, I feel like, riding high, and then I'll go to work. And I don't know if you're familiar with resident education. We're kind of like the low totem pole. We're the scum of the earth. And so
only from The Pit and other shows I watch, right?
Yeah. And so you just have this weird dynamic where I'm like, do you know I'm married to Eli McCann? And they don't. None of them know.
He's very proud of me, which is very sweet.
But so, I mean, is there any anti-Mormon sentiment among your colleagues who might find Eli remarkably positive?
I think I'm sure all of you have experienced passing comments here and there, or, well, they're not going to want to do that because they're Mormon or things of that nature. For the most part, no, it's not like overt hatred by any of my colleagues, largely because they frequently through residency are from other areas of the country, and they don't have the complicated emotions that can come with perhaps growing up in Utah or within that culture. So no, largely it's positive, but there can be ignorant or not ignorant, but still a little cynical comments here and there that are just kind of what it is.
But you're asking, Peggy, do people look at my columns as apologetics and are negative about?
No one has ever been.
I have never had anyone say that to my face, or anyone that I know say, write that to me. I only ever see that kind of feedback from anonymous people on the internet, but I do see it, and I'm not offended by it. I don't think I'm doing apologetics.
I'm offended by it.
He's offended. He gets offended. I don't think I'm writing apologetics or criticism. Really, it's not. I write.
It's just so ironic when I hear people say how quote positive it is. I'm like, we're talking about a gay man who resigned from the church, right? Like, this is not. And yet remarkably pro-church. It's not pro-church policies or anything like that, but sort of a generous look at the culture.
It can be, but it's interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this. I will write a column and literally back to back have comments from people I don't know who accuse me of apologetics and accuse me of being anti-Mormon for the exact same piece of writing. And
we get that too.
Yeah, I know you get that too. And I don't think I'm doing either. I'm just sharing a story, and people are interpreting that through their own life experience and their own belief system, and having a visceral and emotional reaction to whatever it is that I'm writing. And so to me, those comments are saying far more about the person who's making them than it is about me or what I wrote. So it's fine,
So I was going to ask you this a little later, but I'm going to ask you right now because it's kind of come up. As a gay person, you freely acknowledge the pain the church has caused you, but you still hold a soft spot for the church, its culture, its people. How are you able to do that?
I don't know that I would say I don't know that I would say I hold a soft spot for the church. Okay. And when I say that, I'm talking about the corporation, the organization. I think it's a nuanced organization. I think it does some good in the world. I think it does some bad in the world as well. I think it's a huge ship that no one is able to steer by themselves. And sometimes the church makes public statements, official statements that piss me off. And sometimes they say and do things that I'm applauding. I have a very nuanced view of the organization. I would say I hold a very soft place in my heart for huge aspects of the culture. And for me as a gay man, that is probably really possible because of my family and how accepting and supportive they've been of me. Because my family has been so good to me over the years, even as I've come out and left the church, and because they've been such big cheerleaders in my life, it's a lot easier for me to look at the pieces of culture that really shaped me as a child through a warm lens. I think if there was more baggage around that relationship with my family, it would be a lot more difficult for me to have warm, fuzzy feelings about the fact that my family was really bad at, but sometimes tried to do family home evening in the 90s. And the fact that people say from the pulpit, we're thankful for the moisture because, it's just a thing that we say in the desert here. And, those kinds of things are warm and fun for me. But I have plenty of friends who have just horrible experiences coming out of the closet and leaving the church and being disowned from their families, that it is hard for them to find any of it funny. And I totally get that. I'm very privileged in that way.
Mm-hmm. So we've referred to this already. You have to tell us the story about the day you resigned from the church.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So resigning from the church, it's such a funny concept in the first place. And this was a huge conversation with Skylar for many years because I wasn't sure that I wanted to go through the steps of, going through corporate to cancel my relationship with God and asking that my records be removed. And there were a lot of thoughts around that. For one, I just kept thinking, does this really matter? I'm out. I don't believe in it. Does it matter that I'm on some roster somewhere? And if I go through the process of getting my records removed, that might make my parents sad. I don't think that they would have ever really expressed that to me because they've just, been so supportive of me, but it might,
but that might have crossed some kind of line.
I don't know. It just kind of make them sad symbolically, even though they know that I'm out and they, they've processed that and are seem fine with it. It just, I wasn't sure that it was worth the risk. But then the church organization, the corporation would do something that made me really upset. And I would say, I don't want to be counted among these ranks, and I would kind of go back and forth about that for a long time. And I would talk to Skylar about it. And Skylar was just sort of like,
I think it was unnecessary and silly to this day.
Yeah. Skylar didn't, this isn't his experience. So he's just sort of like, it's like having a Netflix subscription that you don't even pay for anymore. Like, who cares? Why go through?
Tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's around to hear it or take their name off a roster. Does it make it?
Yeah. And so
donation and tithing.
And so what finally triggered the final thing was I was getting all these emails from my home ward. My church records had been transferred to my parents' ward at some point. And I was getting all these emails asking me to sign up for tithing settlement and asking me to, come to ward activities and whatever. And I would reply and ask them to take me off the email list and nobody would ever respond to me. And it was just, I think, just a big disorganized mess over there. And finally, one day the bishop sent an email to the entire ward praising the family proclamation and, mentioning its endorsement of the traditional family and whatever. And here I am, a gay man married to a man. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting these emails that I have asked that, I do not want these anymore from this bishop who is supporting the doctrine of an organization that doesn't even believe that I should be married to the person sitting next to me. And it was finally this final trigger, this nail for me where I just thought, I want to be out of this. I just want to be done. I'll tell you in hindsight, I honestly, I don't feel relieved or happy or sad, or I have no feeling around having done this at this point. And so I do think I did. I do think now I overthought it. But at this particular moment,
surprise.
Yeah, a few years ago, I just got to this point. I emailed the bishop back a very impolite email. And I just said, I have been asking to not be contacted for years. I'm sick of this. Do I have to get my records removed, and in order to get you people to stop emailing me? And I swore a little bit too. I wasn't allowed to write that in the column.
The Holy Ghost went to bed at that point.
That's right.
Yeah. And the bishop was really kind. He emailed back pretty immediately and just said, "I am so sorry. I did not know you'd been asking to be taken off the email list." And he said, "If you want to get your records removed, I would be happy to look into how we do that. I'm a new bishop. I've never done this before, but I can help. I will help you with that. If you don't want them removed, but just don't want to get emails, I'll make sure you don't get email." He was very accommodating. And so I went through this period for a while after that where I would I didn't answer him right away and was just sort of like, maybe I should do it. Maybe I overreacted. And then finally one day I was just like, I'm sick of thinking about this. I'm just going to do it and make the decision. Then I never have to think about this again. And so I told him, I want to do this. And he said, okay, you can either send me a notarized letter or you can meet me and I'll meet you anywhere and you can sign the letter. And I said, well, you live by my parents and I'm coming to visit my parents this week on one evening. If I can stop by your house, that'll be fine. And so that time came, I stopped by, visited my parents, and I actually did let them know that I was going to be doing this. And they already knew that I was because this bishop had told them, and they were like, don't be mad at him. He doesn't know you, but he knows us. And he was feeling weird about the fact that he had been communicating. And I was like, I don't care. In fact, I'm happy that he told you because I think he probably helped them think through it in a very healthy way. But my parents were so supportive. Like, if this is what you need to do, then do it. We don't worry about us. And so I went to this bishop's house and I'd never met this man before. He had moved into the neighborhood long after I moved out of the house, my parents' house. And I knock on the door. He is visibly nervous, and because I don't know if he knew who to expect or what kind of energy to expect from me. But I walked in and we sat down in his living room. I felt like I was his home teacher. And we're making small talk for like 25 minutes, and, about my parents, because that's our only common thing is, your parents are great. And I'm like, yeah, they sure are great. Oh, they're the backbone of the ward. Oh, they're the backbone of my family. We're just going back and forth. And finally, he says to me, okay, well, did you bring it? And I said, bring what? And he said, the letter, you need to give me a letter saying you want to resign. And I said, oh, I just thought you had like a form I could sign. I don't. So he said, okay, I'll go get my laptop and you can write your resignation letter. You sign it here, whatever. I was like, great. So he runs out of the room and I can hear his family in the kitchen and they're all just kind of whispering like, and I can, Dad just went to get his laptop. Cause I'm sure he had briefed them on like, I don't know, this is going to be really uncomfortable. This guy sent me a very impolite email, and he comes back in with the laptop and hands it to me. And I say to him, well, what is the letter supposed to say? I've never written one of these before. And he said, I'm not sure. So he gets out his phone and starts Googling anti-Mormon websites for how do you resign from the church, this poor bishop. And so I start typing and give it my best shot. And it was just like this former religious version of myself came out of me. And I was writing like, I hereby forevermore relinquish my everlasting covenants. It was just like, I was like, I don't know what
you did start and it came to pass.
And it came to pass high on a mountaintop. And I write this awkward, archaic 19th century religious letter like I am Joseph Smith penning the Doctrine and Covenants, and I turn it and show it to this bishop and I say, okay, will this work? And he just kind of gave it a puzzled look and he said, I think they'll get the point. And so he prints it out and I can hear the family, yeah, Dad's printing it now, and he prints it out, brings it back into the room and hands the paper to me and a pen. And I say to him, do you have like a book or something I can sign on? And he reaches down and I see him put his hand on something on the table next to me and he pauses and I look over and he has his hand on the largest copy of the Book of Mormon I have ever seen. It's like one of those giant, book copies. And it's just like his brain rebooted and he just got his hand on this thing. And I look up at him and he looks at me and he just whispers, I'm sorry, because I can see that, in this moment he's thinking, like this guy has asked me not to send him religious stuff, and I just about handed him a Book of Mormon, and he's just sort of like, this is probably not the appropriate signing table for this. But as that happened, I just had this flash of a thought through my head, which was, well, this is the book that caused all of that. This is the book that caused my dad to like baptize me and sent me on a mission to Ukraine to get beat up multiple times. And this is the book that caused me angst through my 20s as I sort of figured out how to come out of the closet. And, it's sort of the book that started it all. And I said to him, actually, that's perfect for me, Mm-hmm. And so he handed me the book and we both started laughing because the irony of me signing my resignation letter on this gigantic copy of the Book of Mormon was just so funny to us. And I signed it. And by the time I finished signing, we were both laughing so hard. I'm bent over, tears in my eyes, laughing. And I walk out of his house and he wishes me luck and I thank him, and it was just sort of the most perfect way for me to have resigned from the church.
Okay. Fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a child.
So cute.
Mm-hmm.
Most beautiful baby,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I think so.
We
I asked my
agree.
mom and she agreed too.
Yeah.
And she had me.
And a few other children.
Yeah.
How has your life changed? And do you at all worry about him looking back and saying, my gosh, my whole life was chronicled in the Salt Lake Tribune?
I want to hear Skylar talk about how his life changed, but I'll answer that second point, which is he's still a baby. I do plan to be very, very careful about how I write about this child online. We've all seen mommy blogging over the years plenty. And so it is important for me to maintain his privacy. And so far, he's only a baby. His personality is starting to come out. But so far, I've really only written about him existing in a general sense and what it feels like to be a parent. But Skylar, how has your life changed?
I'm so tired. I'm so tired right now.
That's the appropriate response.
Yes. Every parent.
We will go out and hang with friends and they'll be like, do you want a wine or a glass of wine or something? And I don't. I feel like a little drunk all the time. Is this just what family life is like? It's kind of fun, but mostly a little sleepy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me is I knew Skylar was going to be really good with a baby and be a really good parent. I was worried that I would not be. I've never liked babies all that much. I thought I'd be a really good dad to a teenager, but I was like, I don't know about. But I think the biggest surprise for me is how much I like having a baby. It's been just a really, really fun 17 months. The most difficult part of being a new parent for me is feeling tethered. It's not necessarily always a bad thing. I like that I've got this attachment to somebody, but it's weird going 40 years without having something that's sort of, you have to constantly be taken care of I can't just pop out of the house whenever I want to go run an errand or, whatever else. It's that feeling of being tethered that it has been the biggest adjustment for me, but it's been a fine adjustment. It's been fun, I think.
It's funny that he had any doubt. We recently hung out with all of my college friends with all of their kids. They're all relatively new parents too. And at one point, Eli left to walk around with West, and all of us turned to each other and we're essentially, Eli is an unrealistic standard of a parent. He's too good. We're doing a good job too. He's incredible. He's an incredible father.
They get even funner as they get older, I will tell you.
It's just so great having this little person looking up to you and just,
He's so snuggly and warm.
He loves us so much, and it's the best. I'm like, I didn't do anything to deserve this, but thank you.
It's totally true. Also, your child is so well behaved, and not all children are like that.
We got lucky.
So lucky.
So lucky.
Okay, so Eli, you touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but explain why you still call yourself a Mormon, not a Latter-day Saint.
Oh, why I use the word Mormon instead of Latter-day Saint? Mm-hmm. I mean, Mormon is a broader term than Latter-day Saint, right? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people who are not Latter-day Saints that I would say are Mormon, on some level. But I like the word Mormon. I know it's a victory for Satan. I am aware. But I think it, it's the word that we used as a kid. And Gordon B. Hinckley, who was the president of the church for a big part of my adolescence and young adulthood, praised this word and used it in a way that made me feel like I was a part of a community that was interesting. And so I don't like any effort to try and remove the word Mormon from our vocabulary. I don't like. Now, people can use whatever word they want to describe themselves, and that's fine. And if somebody said to me, please don't call me a Mormon, I want to be called a Latter-day Saint, I'll respect that. But periodically I'll refer to my own background as, Mormon or ex-Mormon or, whatever. And whenever anybody tries to police that, I say, no, you don't get to decide what I call myself. And the word Mormon works perfectly fine for me.
Okay. A final question for both of you.
Okay.
Who's funnier at home?
I think it's me.
Who's funnier at home? I think it might be you.
Eli provides the substance.
I'm grumpier.
That's yeah.
He's not going to disagree.
Is he the straight man and you're the no pun intended there, guys?
I don't know.
It depends on the circumstance.
Okay.
It really does depend on the circumstance. We have our roles that we've just sort of figured out. I'm a more loosey-goosey parent in a lot of ways. Skylar is the organized parent,
which I'm surprised about.
But when it comes to like finances or anything legal, I'm the one that's mad. We were talking before we started recording about how every marriage has the one spouse who would shrivel up and die if the other one died because you don't know the passwords to things. I don't know if Skylar would figure out how to file our taxes. But if he died, I would never be able to log into any of our devices
or turn on the lights
that are all run by robots. Yeah. So
it just seems like it's much like your columns, though. His is the rejoinder that really gets the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, Skylar? Do you think you're funnier?
No, I'm being a little facetious. I think he's pretty funny.
I do. I will say, as you mentioned the columns, it is a funny thing to me. Every time I send you a column, Dave,
mm-hmm.
I am so keenly aware how self-absorbed it feels to be. I'm writing stories about myself and saying, here, publish this in the newspaper. The people will want to know this, next. And it is a funny thing. I am so grateful that you're willing to publish them. But it is kind of a funny and in some ways vulnerable thing to write stories about my life and then send them in and expect and hope that people are going to want to read them. And a lot of people who read the Tribune have no interest in my columns. And I get it. Why should they? And some people do. And it's interesting. We'll sometimes get comments on my columns that are, why is this in the newspaper? Why is this news? And I'm like, it's not. Why should this isn't interesting to me? I'm like, yeah, it doesn't need to be, but they're fun for me to write. They're a joy for me to have. And I am just very, very grateful for the opportunity to have been able to write them these last few years. And now again, have this book. It's just really a really cool thing for me.
And if you haven't read them, the name of the book again is We're Thankful for the Moisture, a Gay Guide's Guide to Mormon Faith, Family, and Fruit Preservation. Eli, you have an event coming up?
Yeah, on February 24th at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, UMOCA. The event starts at 7 p.m. It's with Signature Books and the Tribune. Dave will be doing a Q&A with me on stage. We have Troy Williams, who's the director of Equality Utah, is going to do an intro about the importance of finding joy in your culture. I think it's going to be a really fun night. We'll have books there. I'll sign as many books as people want after the event. You can find tickets on Eventbrite. I don't know what's the best way to direct people there, if you can post them in show notes.
Google
or something.
it, I guess.
Yeah.
Google Eli Eventbrite. You probably will find it.
Yeah, you should be able to find it. We have a limited amount of seating. So if you want to come, reserve your spot ASAP.
And we'll be sending things out to our Mormon Land listeners and audience and people on our list for that. Yeah. Eli McCann, Skylar Westerdahl, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. And thanks to Peggy Fletcher Stack
Always a pleasure.
and to our producer, Chris Samuels. We remind our listeners that they can keep up on all the happenings in and about the church by subscribing to the Salt Lake Tribune's free Mormon Land newsletter. Just go to sltrib.com to sign up, and we'll talk again next time on Mormon Land.